Resident Evil is turning 30 years old in 2026, and while there are dozens of games, a fair share of movies, books, and more within this massive series, we have the viruses and infections to thank for the horrible monstrosities we've come to both simultaneously love and celebrate, and run in fear from. With Resident Evil Requiem recently announced as the 9th mainline game to punctuate the 30 years of gaming's most celebrated survival horror franchise, the possibility of experiencing deadly new viruses and infections, especially with the series returning nearly 30 years later to present-day Raccoon City, is at an all-time high. Today, we are taking a look at the evolution of the viruses and infections we've seen grace the series, spanning the games, movies, novels, and even an amusement park ride. That's right, my friends, we are going deep into every Resident Evil infection, 18 to be exact, ranking these viruses and infections from least deadly to the very deadliest in all of Resident Evil. Now, for good measure, let me know in the comments which returning viruses and conversely new viruses and infections you think may be introduced in the upcoming Resident Evil Requiem. Also, feel free to let us know your own rankings while you're at it, and give the video a like, as this one took quite a long time to make. So without further ado, don that gas mask and put on some serious PPE, because we are about to dive into the deadliest viruses and infections in all of Resident Evil. Try not to get bit! Are any of you familiar with the clay virus? Don't worry if you've never heard about this one before, as the virus never actually made its way into Resident Evil. This virus originally appeared in the script for Resident Evil 2 during that game's production, introduced by then scriptwriter Kenichi Iwao, where the clay virus would serve as an important stepping stone to a virus that would ultimately become known in Resident Evil lore as the progenitor virus. Before the progenitor virus became fully conceptualized and implemented in Resident Evil 5 as the clay virus's replacement, the clay virus was written to contain 4 strains that were associated with the T-virus variants that resulted in many of the series' early creatures and boss fights. These 4 strains were the Alpha type, used in the creation of the aquatic BOW known as Neptune, the Beta 1 type, used to create the Cerberus BOW, the Beta 2 type, used as a bonding agent to create the Hunter, and finally the Epsilon strain, the strain for the virus that infected Arklay Laboratories' staff. While the clay virus is certainly obscure, as it served as an idea that ultimately became known arguably as the most important virus in the series, in the progenitor virus, we gotta throw another obscure one your way in the TJCCC203 virus. Yeah, that one's quite the mouthful. One of the lesser known viruses, we have the TJCCC203, a T-virus variant that was only referenced in the Resident Evil Outbreak series. Developed as an oncolytic virus, a virus that targets eliminating cancerous cells, it had illegally entered clinical trials when the Umbrella Corporation delivered the virus to a hospital in the Arklay Mountains. The first test subject was Doug Frost, a 63-year-old man, and while his cancer cells did in fact die, the TJCCC203 caused the subject to develop a voracious appetite associated with zombification. Frost ultimately ended up dying 3 days after being administered the drug. Second test subject was Dorothy Lester, a 34-year-old woman, and like Doug Frost, Lester had an extreme appetite and began showing symptoms consistent with zombification. Shortly afterward, Lester partially ate a journalist investigating the clinical trial at the hospital, killing the journalist in the process. She later died shortly after that incident, which led to the hospital shutting down entirely, with her body being placed in a storage unit in the ICU. Interestingly, the TJCCC203 managed to infect a plant, growing to extreme proportions, and ultimately consumed Dorothy's corpse with its zombified behaviors. While very little else is known about the TJCCC203, its ability to leave its subjects with voracious appetites capable of producing cannibalistic behavior is reason alone to mark this as a dangerous virus. This one is a really unique virus, and if you want a chance to see this rare and obscure virus in action, you're not gonna find it in a video game, but instead at a theme park. That's right, we are going over the one, the only, the Cameron virus. This virus originates from a film known as Biohazard 4D Executor, a 3D film created by Capcom that debuted in 2000 that you can still see today. This film is currently shown in Mosaic Garden, a theme park just west of Osaka, so get out there if you'd like a taste of one of Resident Evil's most obscure viruses. The Cameron virus is named after Dr. Cameron, an Umbrella USA researcher working in Raccoon City, where after becoming infected with the T virus during the 1998 outbreak, she injected herself with something that she had spent much of her time working on, a manipulated T virus, where the host could transfer their consciousness into another organism. When UBCS, the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service, sent a team to secure the doctor's research, Cameron injected herself with her created virus when she suffered a horrific mutation that resulted in her nearly losing all human characteristics, as her body mutated into a hulking monstrosity. What made this virus particularly deadly, as stated earlier, was the ability of those infected having the ability to transfer their intelligence and minds into the bodies of those they come into physical contact with. As such, Cameron was able to infect all manner of living organisms, transferring her consciousness to these new hosts to help spread the virus, while also furthering her own goals. This was also true of animals and insects, as a cockroach infected with the Cameron virus could infect a rat through touch, morphing the two creatures together to become a roach rat. Even though Dr. Cameron's twisted, heavily mutated body ended up being destroyed by the UBCS team, she was ultimately able to live on through the humans and animals she infected. During the film's final moments, Cameron was seen infecting Roger, a member of the UBCS team, as he and his companion, Klaus, attempted to escape the city. With Roger now morphed with Cameron, Cameron eliminated Klaus and was seen driving off into the sunset as the film came to an end. While we have no concrete evidence as to what happened with Cameron after the events of the film, it is likely that she was wiped out when Raccoon City was blown up by the government to contain the T-virus outbreak. Such a fascinating virus, and one that would honestly make for a fun thing to see in a game, even though other viruses do share some of these traits. Let me know what you think about the Cameron virus in the comments below, and if you managed to see Biohazard 4D Executor in person. The E strain, or the Epsilon strain, is next, as this powerful variation of the T virus created some of the most violent and memorable monstrosities from the earlier games in Resident Evil. The E strain was developed to increase the likelihood of a human mutating into a super soldier while limiting brain damage, making them much more effective bioweapons than the previous iteration that used the Beta 2 strain. Intimately related to the Tyrant project, the first confirmed E strain was the Tyrant T002 model that players first encountered in Resident Evil. Everything went south during a medical procedure in May 1998 when an airborne form of the E strain virus was accidentally released from the Tyrant's body, which consequently spread through the facility and infected the staff. These former staff members ultimately succumbed and turned into zombies. Unlike other earlier T-virus strains, E-strain zombies who sustained serious damage would end up becoming the deadly Crimson Heads of whom were encountered during the Mansion incident, taking place in the Resident Evil remake. It was also the E-strain that led to the creation of the blind yet incredibly agile and deadly Lickers, so the E-strain absolutely does not mess around. Alright. Time for another pretty obscure virus. This one is called the Chimera virus, where it first appeared in the novel Biohazard to the Liberty. Released in 2002, this novel takes place in New York City where an outbreak of the T-virus wreaks havoc on the local populace. While not much is known about the Chimera virus, as it was never mentioned again within Resident Evil and all its media, we do know its creator, Dr. Robert Chan, developed the virus in an effort to eliminate the issue of uncoordinated mutations in the T-virus. This new Chimera virus would instead allow the subject infected with the virus to mutate by willpower, giving the infected autonomy over when to mutate. The Chimera virus would also contain within it an agent that would deliver the subject a genetically implanted desire to attain perfection, some jargon Dr. Chan often used to highlight the infected's increased desire to grow in strength to continue the spread of the virus. Initially planning to release the virus into New York City, Dr. Chan instead changed his plans when he discovered what he thought would be the perfect test subject in a believed serial killer, Jack Tramp. While unsuccessful in his attempt to infect Jack, a newspaper reporter was instead infected, and not much else came about the Chimera virus after the reporter was disposed of. A deadly virus capable of generating mutations through sheer willpower while instilling the infected a willpower to achieve perfection, it definitely sounds incredibly dangerous, but I have a hard time ranking this as a virus more deadly than the standard T-virus. With the uncontrolled mutations common in the T-virus, and with just having so much more data on the T-virus in general with its numerous outbreaks, I'd say the T-virus and what we've seen result from the destruction that virus created makes it a bit deadlier. But there's no denying that the Chimera virus deserves its place on this list, and perhaps if there were more incidents and data recorded for it, it could have placed even higher. Las Plagas. This infection, like the name implies, is endemic to the mountainous regions of Spain, and in English translates to the plagues. This infection is quite insidious in nature, as it infects a host, in which over time, the host undergoes hallucinogenic episodes and at times experiences excruciating pain throughout the body. This comes in the form of internal hemorrhaging, where typical symptoms are coughing up blood, convulsions, fainting, and the swelling of blood vessels in the extremities, and particularly around the eyes. There are two distinct types of plaga, being the dominant plaga and the subordinate plaga. Examples of the dominant plaga are monstrosities like village chief Vitores Mendez, Ramon Salazar, and Osmond Sadler, the leader of the Los Iluminados cult that ushered in the events of Resident Evil 4 by infecting those around him with primarily the subordinate plaga. Dominant plagas are able to retain control of their cognitive abilities, able to communicate clearly to those around via speech, and are able to mutate into their plagas form on command. The dominant plagas can also issue commands to their subordinate plagas, which reside largely in the villagers and other humans alike, along with other beings like dogs and wolves. These subordinate plagas are able to function quite normally and like to behave in groups, so while their brains aren't completely taken over by the fungus, once issued a command from a dominant plaga, that connection to the brain gets overridden, where the plaga is in full control, and it is here that the plaga eyes a potential host to further the spread of the illness. Those infected with the plaga parasite may mutate with large tendrils erupting from the host's head, sporting a variety of pincer and scythe-like qualities that can cut down their prey with ease. The plaga parasite grants their host enhanced stamina and durability, allowing hosts to withstand incredible amounts of punishment and wield heavy objects. Thanks to Luis Serra's research in eradicating the virus, there is a way of removing the parasite if the infection is caught early enough in its incubation period. With parasites taking a few days to reach maturity, one could hypothetically rid themselves of the illness with a procedure in which extreme levels of UV exposure to the parasite could obliterate it before maturing. There is also medicine one may take to slow the growth of the parasite, allowing one to undergo the operation to get rid of it. If one were to be infected with Las Plagas, this may be one of the most desirable ones in all of Resident Evil to be infected by, simply due to its regenerative properties and being able to mostly carry on with one's tasks. But once that parasite has been issued a command from the top, well, you may just turn into one of these angry ladies after you realize someone messing around in the tool shed. Do you like being scared? Like, really scared? If so, avoid this virus at all costs, because we're about to dive into the T-Phobos virus, appearing in Resident Evil Revelations 2. This virus solely reacts to the hormone norepinephrine, a stress hormone, where the more one is exposed to stress, the likelier it would be for the host to mutate, and mutate in the most grotesque and horrifying ways possible. Part of the Wesker project, this virus was tested on individuals as an experiment to create a group of superhumans able to withstand incredible amounts of mutations. The afflicted are humans that are exposed to the T-Phobos virus. Being exposed to extreme levels of torture and fear with no real exposure to light from the outside, these tortured beings would mutate and act violently toward anyone who was not infected. These mutations happen within mere seconds, and once mutated, the victims seem to lose their sense of fear, feeling a sense of euphoria and a desire to kill those not infected. Due to being tortured for long periods of time, some of these victims mutate with gash wounds, wrapped with coils of barbed wire, or impaled by any matter of instruments, further deforming these monstrosities. Many afflicted grow large tumors all over their body, with the largest resting on their heads. Due to these tortured victims living painful years without exposure to sunlight from outside, they are especially weak to light, like the light emitted from Moira's flashlight, allowing Claire to finish off these victims with her firepower. Interestingly, this virus seems to only mutate men, with infected women dying from the intense pain caused by the mutations. It is because only those with extreme levels of trauma becoming victims of T-Phobos that this virus isn't higher on this list. Claire and Moira were infected with the virus, and even though they experienced some horrifying events throughout Resident Evil Revelations 2, the virus still didn't kill them. Regardless, T-Phobos doesn't mess around, providing an excellent virus and setting for one of the best modern Resident Evil games out there. Named after Veronica Ashford, the Ashford family's matriarch, the T. Veronica virus is a mutagenic virus, which, if the conditions are correct, allows the host to retain full intellectual capabilities. While it operates similarly to the progenitor virus and T virus, it distinguishes itself with its tendency for infected individuals to manifest anthropodic traits in their mutations. These insectoid limbs may sprout out of the victim, and they also have the ability to hurl their own blood as projectiles towards victims. Similarly to the T virus, the T. Veronica virus tends to cause extreme mental degradation in its host. But unlike the T virus, the T. Veronica can be stabilized in the host should the host live with the virus for a number of years, allowing the virus to adapt to the body. This can only really be done if one infected with the T. Veronica virus enters a state of cryogenic stasis, allowing the virus to slow substantially. We see this firsthand with Alexia Ashford in Resident Evil Code Veronica, and again in Resident Evil The Dark Side Chronicles, in which Javier Hidalgo regularly replaced his daughter Manuela's infected organs, causing the spread to come to a crawl. It is because of these processes to circumvent the spread of the virus that it ranks here. Otherwise, it's incredibly deadly, and being like the progenitor and T virus is certainly not something you want to mess around with. Alright. If you like Wesker and his glowy red eyes that we saw in RE5, along with his superhuman strength, look no further than the prototype virus. This particular virus is a unique strain of the T virus that was developed as part of Project W, with W standing for Wesker here, and a special screening process for identifying the most genetically gifted of the Wesker children. Of the 13 subjects, only 2 survived, those being Albert Wesker and Alex Wesker. Given to him by Dr. William Birkin, of whom we'll discuss soon enough, Albert injected himself with the virus during the 1998 Mansion incident, allowing himself to survive the impalement from the T-002 Tyrant and escape the Spencer Mansion. Unbeknownst to those around him, the power Wesker gained from the virus allowed Albert to become a global threat, with his insane superhuman capabilities being showcased in full force in Resident Evil 5. Perhaps the best way of identifying those who have the prototype virus is the appearance of the subject's eyes, with their red hues and cat-like pupils being the easiest identifier. These eyes allow those with the prototype virus to process visual information much more quickly than a normal human, also granting them the ability to move at incredibly fast speeds in short bursts. For those who survive the virus injection, survivors develop incredible strength and endurance, speed and agility, while also having the ability to regenerate damaged organs, and because the virus does not inhibit the brain, the subject is able to maintain full control over its powers granted by the virus. Now, the virus is extremely selective, to put it lightly, as if the host does not possess the very specific genes required to be compatible with the virus, the host will be killed. Now, let's say you survive the injection and you contain within you the prototype virus. Well, Due to the instability of the virus, the host would need to inject themselves with a serum to keep the virus under control, otherwise the host's abilities will weaken. The host would also need to inject themselves with specific dosages, as too much of the serum will instead act as a poison. Considering all this and the fact that just 2 people were able to survive the prototype virus, it remains incredibly dangerous, but its lack of compatibility makes the virus quite useless in the end. Definitely an iconic virus that resulted in one of the greatest RE boss fights in history. It's just too bad the virus wasn't strong enough to withstand this badness.
Nothing but lose.
A fungal organism that not only possesses highly mutagenic properties, but also contains the capacity to control the minds of infected hosts, it's time to talk about the mold. Discovered by Mother Miranda in Resident Evil Village, but first spotted in RE9 Biohazard, the mold was experimented with in an attempt for Mother Miranda to bring her deceased daughter back to life. The mold is nasty. This black, gooey substance takes over the victim's cells once infected, allowing the host's body to gain impressive regenerative abilities that allow victims to quickly regenerate wounds, like severed limbs. Once the mold reaches the host's brain, this inevitably results in the infected host becoming hostile and may experience hallucinations, potentially losing all sense of self, acting solely in accordance to the will of a certain antagonist controlling it all. With extreme exposure to the mold, can it completely overwhelm a victim's body and its structure, resulting in what is called the molded. These creatures are made entirely of mold and can be created from both a living or deceased subject. While a vaccine can be synthesized for a cure against the mold, those infected with high traces of it are likely to perish after being injected with a serum. Although some may live, the chances are small, especially with high traces of mold coursing through a victim's body. Cado, meaning gift in Romanian, turns out to be slightly more dangerous than the mold we previously discussed. Mother Miranda, first shown in Resident Evil Village, did some experiments with the mold on her own, allowing it to morph into something quite different after exposing the mold to a parasitic nematode, causing the creation of the Cado. Miranda's research notes of the Cado reveal that the illness can infect hosts via direct injection, implantation, and through the spreading of wounds. Cado is especially dangerous, as the illness assimilates to the DNA of a host, ultimately altering the host to incorporate DNA from other organisms in which the Cado assimilated. Prime example of this are the Dimitrescu sisters, who took on the ability to transform between their human form and their swarm of flies' appearances, being able to change their appearances on the fly. Pun very much intended. The implantation of the Cado can be incredibly dangerous for the host, as this often results in death within days, and even if one does survive, such beings often turn into mutants known as lichens, and these were considered failed adaptations according to Mother Miranda and her superhuman project. What can make Cado even more dangerous is their ability to control subcolonies of their own, even being able to survive when bisected. Such was the case with Donna Beneviento, where she stored half the Cado in her body with the other half planted within her doll, Angie. As such, Donna was able to control her doll on command and give Ethan a serious pain in his ass while confronting her. The Cado's critical weak point lies in the Cado itself, as if the Cado were to be struck and killed, it, along with its connected Cado and other organisms, would also perish. Due to the increased variety of mutants and its ability to modify DNA to take on multiple appearances via transformations, the Cado remains one of the deadliest funguses in all of Resident Evil, and a solid leap in danger over its moldy cousin. The Stairway to the Sun, this exotic flower from West Africa led to the creation of the progenitor virus. This virus was worshipped by the Ndipaya tribe, a tribe that selected its leaders based on those who managed to survive after eating the highly toxic flower. It was back in 1966 when Edward Ashford, James Marcus, and Oswell E. Spencer discovered the progenitor virus and tried to cultivate it themselves. Only able to cultivate it in its native soil, it wasn't until 1978 when James Marcus reached a breakthrough in his research of the flower that he was able to craft a virus after combining progenitor with leech DNA. While by itself, the progenitor virus was nothing special and was proven to be ineffective as a bioweapon, even though it had a decent mortality rate. It did, however, lay the groundwork for the creation of a considerable amount of the deadliest viruses in all of Resident Evil, as traces of the progenitor virus are contained in the following: T-Virus, T-Veronica, G-Virus, T-Abyss, Ouroboros, T-Phobos, A-Virus, and the C-Virus. Yeah, it basically is responsible for the rest of this list, so we can salute this exotic flower for all the terror to come. The first of the progenitor-based mutagens resulted in one of the most iconic viruses in all of Resident Evil, the T-Virus. The T-Virus led to the development of numerous types of bioweapons, most notably the Hunter and the Tyrant series, with its most noteworthy aspect of being able to reanimate the bodies of deceased human hosts. These cannibalistic zombies and other creations from the T-Virus are the cause of some of the most devastating events in the series, like the Raccoon City incident, in which the whole city had to be effectively nuked to seize the spread of the deadly virus. The T-Virus consumes the cells in the host, leading to necrosis, and incorporates itself into the host's DNA, substantially altering it. In a live host, all higher brain functions are destroyed, leaving only the cerebellum to govern its behavior, resulting in the host becoming very hostile and animalistic. For a host that had been deceased, the virus provides a small amount of energy to the lower brain, causing more primal instincts in the host like eating and walking. There are incredible amounts of mutations here, from traditional humans leading to zombies, crimson heads, zombie dogs, bats, crows, lickers, spiders, this freaking alligator, and so much more. And we can't forget the BOWs and the hunters, tyrants, the nemesis T-type, etc. The virus causes considerable brain damage, but should a vaccine be administered early on in the infection process, lives can be saved, like Jill Valentine in the events of Resident Evil 3. The T-Virus is arguably the most iconic of the viruses in Resident Evil, and has gone down as creating some of the series' best and most horrifying creations. Known as the A-Virus, we have the Animality Virus. Engineered as a bioweapon led by former CIA agent Glenn Arias, the A-Virus causes a disease similar to that of the T-Virus, which causes cannibal disease. Where it starts to deviate from the T-Virus and from many other progenitor-derived strains is the much slower rate of cognitive deterioration, resulting in zombies that are able to carry out degrees of speech and coordination. Along with a slower rate of cognitive deterioration, it grants those infected with the A-Virus a degree of enhanced physical attributes like speed, strength, stamina, and durability, proving those infected to be incredibly dangerous and difficult to take down. Its biggest weakness is the virus's highly flammable nature, with its host becoming especially weak to fire. Thankfully, a potential outbreak of the A-Virus in New York City by Glenn Arias was prevented when BSAA's Silver Dagger unit, led by Chris Redfield, along with the US Division of Security Operations with Leon Kennedy, managed to put an end to his plan. While we don't have an idea of just how lethal the A-Virus is among huge populations, we do know, from those who have been infected with it, along with the generally enhanced symptoms of those who had it, that the A-Virus is incredibly dangerous and one of the most lethal of the progenitor virus strains. Believing it was too dangerous to use as a bioweapon, in at number 4 is the T-Abyss virus, the virus Tricell contained to prevent further use. Seen in Resident Evil Revelations, this virus acts similarly to the T-Virus, but instead of turning infected hosts into zombies, they instead become oozes, which are basically just disgusting, wet, bloated creatures who seek to replenish their water content by devouring live organisms. The name of the Abyss virus is derived from a fish that scientists discovered in the body of a deep-sea fish that was able to survive in incredible depths. The T-Abyss virus was a culmination of the Abyss virus from the fish and samples of the T-Virus mutagen developed by Umbrella. Those infected with the T-Abyss virus experience extreme mutations, resulting in heavy physical deformity, the loss of body parts, and deformed fingers and jaws. The T-Abyss virus is particularly dangerous because it has the ability to mutate any given organism, including those previously exposed to various other viral agents. This virus is OP, and definitely provided some of the spookiest enemy designs seen in Resident Evil. Definitely give Revelations a chance if you haven't already done so. We've made it to the top 3, my friends, and honestly, any of these could be a solid number 1 for the most deadly virus in all of Resident Evil. But something's gotta take 3rd place, and that is a solid like and subscribe. That goes to good old Dr. William Birkin, his precious G-Virus. First appearing in Resident Evil 2, the G-Virus, known as the Golgotha virus, was able to trigger mutations in humans that proved to be excessively violent and extreme, rendering the host totally uncontrollable. Discovered by Dr. William Birkin of Umbrella during his experimentation on Lisa Trevor, it was produced as a byproduct within Lisa's body. Extracting the G strain from her body possessed incredible regenerative abilities, allowing wounds to heal over and rapidly grow stronger, essentially granting immortality to those infected. We saw this firsthand with William Birkin himself when he injected himself with the G-Virus after the raid on his laboratory to secure the sample, and turned into a multi-part boss battle that spanned the entire game. It's fascinating how it could have all been avoided during HUNK's Alpha Team extraction, and you can learn about it along with HUNK in this card on your screen. Just be sure to return because we haven't yet seen the end of Resident Evil's deadliest viruses and infections. The Chrysalid virus, or C-Virus, comes in at number 2. Being developed by virologist Carla Radams in Resident Evil 6 by combining enhanced strains of the G and T Veronica viruses. Humans that were infected with the C virus would undergo extreme mutations in response to injury, often mutating further in injured extremities. What makes the C virus especially deadly is that the host retains a level of awareness that other RE viruses just couldn't produce. This means that hosts could utilize a variety of weapons, like firearms, to attempt to neutralize any threats. While there is a vaccine for this virus, the vaccines weren't too effective in reversing mutations that have already occurred, so if you have the C virus, well, just be thankful that you may retain some awareness. Just don't expect to appreciate that deformed body you will probably end up having by it. And now, what I consider to be the most lethal virus in all of Resident Evil would have to be none other than Ouroboros, the deadliest variation of the progenitor virus ever conceived. Created by former Umbrella scientist Albert Wesker, the purpose of Ouroboros was to bring about the evolution of the human race by enforcing natural selection, in which only a select few humans had specific genetics that could survive infection and be transformed into superhumans, while the rest of mankind would be wiped off the face of the planet. This virus, seen in Resident Evil 5, is insanely deadly, causing uncontrollable mutations, leaving the host torn apart for hosts deemed incompatible. Because the host has an awareness of their approaching death during their painful and disfiguring mutation, Ouroboros earns the #1 spot as the deadliest virus in all of Resident Evil. To add, there is no cure to Ouroboros, so thankfully Chris and Sheva were able to put a stop to Wesker's plan of attempting to saturate the entire planet with it. It's no doubt that Resident Evil, throughout its nearly 30 years, has procured some of the most haunting and deadly threats to conceive video games, and we can all thank the viruses and infections in which these horrific creations were born. With Resident Evil Requiem landing in February 2026, we're likely to see some returning viruses, along with terrifying new ones, as hey, we're returning to the scene of the crime at the epicenter of evil for the series' 30th anniversary. I want you to let me know in the comments what you believe to be the deadliest virus and infection in Resident Evil and why. And after you do that, definitely check out the absolute scariest games in the Resident Evil series, ranked from least scary to the scariest. Thanks a lot for stopping by, and I look forward to seeing you real soon in the next one.